The Royal House has criticized City Press and the Sunday Times for obituaries published in the newspapers, calling the articles, quote-unquote, vulgar lies. The monarch decried the articles, saying the reports ridiculed the royal family's pain. City Press Editor-in-chief Mondli Makhanya wrote a scathing piece on the king, saying he was, quote-unquote, a useful idiot in the hands of the apartheid government. His Majesty King Goodwill Zwelithini will be laid to rest in a private ceremony on Thursday. Well, to react to this story now, or should I say to these two obituaries, I'm joined now by Professor Peter Gantuli, and he is a cultural expert. Prof, thank you very much for making time to talk to us. Firstly, before I get into the nub of what Mondli Makhanya is arguing, I want to talk first about the timing of the criticism that has been leveled against the King Goodwill Zwelithini. Is it the right time for articles such as the one that has been published by the City Press to basically come out? And also importantly, let's bear in mind that in the media, there seems to be this notion that for public figures, really, you cannot be talking about timing. When it is time to record someone's legacy, there never is a good time.
You know, there's a general saying that ordinary people know, that don't speak ill of the dead. It is thoroughly un-African, you know, to take a moment such as this when people have been grieving. And if you take these things, I would really expect this from an American or some ignorant Englishman, actually somewhere else, but I wouldn't really expect this, you know, from an African who also happens to be a Zulu, speaking about a Zulu monarch who had kept the nation together despite all the vicissitudes for 50 years. And then call that person an idiot. For me, this comes from such a low level that the Royal House should find it easy to write about it.
The article itself, Professor Peter Gantuli, by Mondli Makhanya, I just want to move away from the headline which says apartheid's useful idiot. I want to get into the sub-headline because that is what the nub of the article is about. He says Zwelithini's willingness to lend his powerful position to the service of the National Party cost tens of thousands of lives in the final years of white oppression. Is he lying?
No, hello?
Yes, I'm here, Prof.
Indeed, what I actually think is that the print media is running out of resources. Therefore, you have to sensationalize a situation at the expense of the feelings of the people, at the expense of the feeling of a nation. Sadly, at this previous thing, if it wasn't the king doing it, an ordinary person, for anybody to say that would be very Africanly unethical, and also, and would actually question one's even sense of Africanness.
Prof, again, I'm going to ask you the question. This is about the legacy of King Goodwill Zwelithini. The point I'm making to you, or the question I'm asking you, is that is Mondli Makhanya and his recount of what has happened and what he sums up as the legacy of King Goodwill Zwelithini, where he says tens of thousands of lives of African people in the final years of white oppression were lost. Is that a lie?
I mean, they were lost. They were lost how? Of course, there were 20,000 people that were lost in the fight between the IFP and the ANC, and that had nothing to do with the king. And on the contrary, it is the king who was getting in between to intervene in this traveling into Gauteng, where some of the people were still fighting to do so. So we cannot add that 20,000. Which other thousands is he actually referring to?
Well, I will tell you exactly what he is referring to. He says that the then PWV, which was Pretoria, Witwatersrand and the Vaal region, was a hotbed of political violence that pitched the apartheid era sponsored Inkatha against township communities. Inkatha regiments, backed and armed by apartheid police and the military, would attack communities in the dead of night and wantonly slaughter young and old. That's his argument, that Inkatha Freedom Party, as led at that time by Chief Mangosuthu Buthelezi, had the backing of the Zulu King.
I mean that's an IFP action that said that it was not the Zulu nation that spearheaded this. To isolate this and then referring it actually to the king, I cannot understand that. I cannot understand.
Well, maybe let me make it.
The IFP that did this.
Maybe let me try.
Was it the Zulu Royal House or was it the IFP?
Well, what Mondli Makhanya records here is that, if you will recall, Chief Buthelezi at the time was called the Prime Minister of the Zulu Nation. Now, what Mondli also argues is that because of age, first and foremost, let me actually just quote directly from the article. He says, history records that young Zwelithini's ascent was expedited at the behest of Buthelezi, who was uncomfortable with how his nemesis, who was Prince Israel, was settling too comfortably into the regiment role. From then on, Buthelezi pulled the young man, this was now Zwelithini, pulled the young man by the nose, and even deep into the king's reign, he behaved as the monarch's senior. That's the history that Mondli Makhanya is taking us back to.
For me, the word reasoning, I cannot fathom. What we have to make clear is that the Prince Mangosuthu Buthelezi as the Prime Minister, the royal of the Zulu Nation, the Royal House, yes, he has got his role as IFP. Once we conflate these two, we end up accusing the wrong people, as Mondli Makhanya is doing actually right and now. And why? I can't understand.
Maybe let me finally try and put you in the clear as to why Mondli Makhanya attributes what the atrocities, as he records, the atrocities that were committed at the hands of the IFP, and he says which IFP was sponsored by the apartheid regime. He then says, Inkatha Freedom Party, purportedly a cultural organization, but actually a political movement, had perfected the craft of ethnic mobilization. Now, selling the dream of returning the Zulu kingdom to its former glory, Inkatha appealed to emotions and nationalist sentiment.
But all through here, we're talking about Inkatha that has mobilized its own people, reduced cultural and political power, as you actually say. I still just cannot actually see that can be left with the sole responsibility of the late King Zwelithini. The logic doesn't follow. We state very categorically that the IFP has its role. Political, cultural, its own mobilization, and what. If we can't say simply because Buthelezi was a guy that was mentoring the king when he was younger and became that, and therefore the king must be responsible for what the IFP has done.
Well, maybe the argument for Mondli Makhanya here is steeped in what he describes. He says for them, it was in defense of the king against the ANC and the communists. Zwelithini went along with the abuse of this throne by the apartheid government and its most loyal and enthusiastic collaborators. This basically was an effort to try and thwart democracy, Professor Pitikantuli. And the argument by Mondli Makhanya is that Inkatha Freedom Party became a useful tool for the apartheid regime to try and prevent what we now know as the dawn of democracy in 1994. But just at that moment, before we came to be what we are today, which is a democracy, that's where his argument is steeped, that Inkatha Freedom Party, with the backing of King Goodwill Zwelithini, this was the reason why he feels that King Goodwill Zwelithini became a useful idiot, as he puts it, for the apartheid regime as led by Chief Mangosuthu Buthelezi.
I'm beginning to suspect that the Mondli has got a personal pride, because logic doesn't actually lead to the conclusions that he eloquently put. To call even somebody else an idiot, someone that has kept a nation for 50 years together. And what does he say about the IFP ANC quarrels that content the king in here? That's where he made those interventions, pretended people to stop the people from fighting. And then in the end, he ends up taking the blame in his grave for the sins that were committed by the IFP. I'm sorry.
All right, Professor Pitikantuli, let's leave it there. That's Professor Pitikantuli weighing in on what has been recorded here as what Mondli Makhanya describes as apartheid's useful idiot. That is the description or the legacy that he paints.